I used to dread going to church on Mother's Day. For 5 long years, it was a reminder of what I wasn't, what I wanted but didn't have, of lack and failure and loss. I wanted to be happy for the moms and celebrate them, but I just felt jealous and invisible. One Mother's Day, about 8 years ago, my husband and I had just returned from Chicago. We arrived in Illinois with a travel crib, an empty car seat, and the hope and excitement of new parents as we raced to the hospital to meet the child we hoped would be our daughter. We left a week later with nothing but the uniquely painful experience of handing back a cherished baby girl as the adoption placement unraveled before our eyes. So that Mother's Day, we escaped to Carmel to avoid everything. And I sat in Mass that Sunday with the enthusiasm of an atheist teenager at the 8 a.m. I don't remember much, but during the blessing of the mothers, there was another glum-looking couple sitting nearby. At dinner that night, we looked up to find that same couple being seated next to us at the restaurant. My husband, of course, gregarious as always, struck up a conversation, and I couldn't believe what unfolded in the next 2 hours. They too were escaping Mother's Day. They too had just handed back a child they would hope would be theirs. They too were swimming in confusion and grief. In our pain, we had felt invisible, but for those 2 hours, we were present to each other in a way no one else could be. We had felt abandoned and lost, but suddenly, miraculously, Jesus was with us, consoling and encouraging, as we made God's loving presence real for each other. I remember feeling as though my heart was vibrating as I wondered aloud, what's the Catholic word for fate? The woman across the table smiled and said, I think we call it grace. Of course, grace. God's loving presence. I think sometimes we can misunderstand this idea of Jesus the shepherd. It can be tempting to think of ourselves, the sheep, in a position of mere obedience. We have to do exactly what the shepherd says. But a shepherd doesn't micromanage. He doesn't tell the sheep exactly where to stand or who they can play with. He simply opens the gate and is present to them in the pasture. Other times, we can believe in a shadow version of the faith where following the rules equals some sort of reward, like an easy life or answered prayers or a mansion in heaven. But Jesus didn't die for this kind of transactional faith. He didn't say, I'm nice to my sheep because they do what I say. No. Jesus asserts, my sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. When Jesus invites us into discipleship, he is offering us an intimate form of presence, an opportunity to show up, to know and be known. As the Good Shepherd, the gift Christ gives and wants to receive is presence. Jesus wants to be present in your life. And that is exactly what happened 8 years ago on Mother's Day. Jesus showed up in the faces of strangers, exactly where we were, exactly when we needed him. Jesus showed up and was present in people just as broken as we were. Presence is powerful, especially in our too busy culture. Presence is a commitment of time. It's the gift of attention. It's a foundational expression of love. But for presence to make a difference, Both parties need to be engaged and aware. My children have realized that if they ask me for something when I'm really engrossed in a project, like, say, writing a homily, I will reflexively say, sure, and then have no memory of what I agreed to, until a little later when I discover them playing barber and vaguely remember a request for scissors. Jesus is not seeking that kind of distracted engagement. Attentive presence is a real challenge in a culture that idolizes technology and efficiency. It demands that we put down our phones and our to-do lists, our goals, and calls us to slow down, to focus on one thing, one person at a time. This focus is not easy, and not just for us. The first disciples also struggled. Their desire for Jesus to keep moving and keep preaching conflicted with Jesus' own instinct to be present to each child, each sinner, each leper clamoring for his touch. It annoyed his disciples endlessly. But as our shepherd, Jesus asks us to let him be truly present in our lives. And as his followers, it's our job to attentively look for his presence in others and to be his presence for others. Our modern day saints, folks like Mother Teresa, Dorothy Day, Jean Vanier, they were all particularly talented at this type of presence. Not just being Christ's presence for the poor, for the suffering, and the mentally challenged, but also recognizing God's presence in them. But we don't have to be saints to be good sheep. We just need to pay attention. Looking for and being Christ in the world doesn't require us to be intimately present to each and every person we encounter, but it does mean we can provide moments of presence to those in our path. Moments of presence like praising a child when you catch them being good. Taking time to make a call or visit someone you know is struggling. Looking a homeless person in the eye when you say hello. Putting down the phone as you listen to somebody's day. Taking a break from your to-do list to give a little extra time or attention to someone who needs it. Or more deeply engaging that stranger or acquaintance who keeps appearing in your life. Opening ourselves up to others in these small ways also opens us up to God. 8 years and 3 children later, Mother's Day is a different experience for me, though it's one I still greet with ambivalence. I still see the faces of those for whom this day is hard. Infertility, divorce, estrangement, illness, and death can all make today particularly challenging. But I am also deeply grateful, if not exhausted, by the miraculous gift of my children. And while I find those handmade cards and gifts so sweet, I know that the most breathtaking Mother's Day gift was given to me long before I became a mother. It was the grace of finding Jesus present in the face of a stranger. And it's a gift we can all experience. So as you receive Jesus' real presence at our table today, please invite him to help you be his presence in your community this week, becoming a gift yourself for God and for the world.
Amen. Amen.